This is the Johnny Cleveland Podcast, all things Cleveland sports, with your host, John Suchan. Hey, good evening. It's the Johnny Cleveland Podcast. Thanks for joining me live here on YouTube, Facebook, and the X. And you can listen to us later on Apple and Spotify and all those great music platforms. I know the other day I did a show, I think was it Saturday, Friday? We did the pregame, and I know some of the audio was a little scratchy. I'm not sure what exactly was happening there. I know we were streaming a lot here at the Suchan household, but so I apologize if any of you are listening to that show on Apple or Spotify or the audio version of that, or even trying to watch me live in this pretty face. It was a little bit weird. So hopefully things are fine right now. If you want to participate in this wonderful show tonight, please interact with us here on YouTube or Facebook or the X. Want to comment on my comments? I have a lot of comments tonight. It's a little bit after 9 o'clock. It's a Tuesday night, August 20 something, 25th, I think. Yeah, I'm immersed in the beginning of school and all that fun stuff. So shout out to Licking Heights again, and have had a great start to the school year. So yeah, if you haven't been hiding under a rock, and I say that all the time, and you're a Cleveland Browns fan or fandom, you've rooted for this team for many years, or maybe not so long, and you're a young kid or whatnot, the Browns are always in the news, and this week is no different. It was at the end of last week, Friday night. I'll get into this a little bit more, but Nick Chubb announced his retirement. And you might know, and you might love Nick Chubb just like I do. He was just such a great professional. He was a great NFL player, and he announced his retirement Friday night. He had played 6 seasons here in Cleveland, or 7 seasons in Cleveland, before he was not picked up from them a year ago, and ended up going over to the Houston Texans, and they did not pick him back up this season. So he announced his retirement. He's had some injuries. We'll get into that in a little bit, just about what Nick Chubb meant to me, what he's meant probably to you as a Cleveland fan over these years. So the Browns, they had this, training camp thing, in this off season, and we're getting ready for the Browns to play in the regular season. And I got to be honest with you, it's been a really difficult 24 hours, 48 hours here for me to take in everything that's happened with what the Browns have done in announcing Deshaun Watson as their starting quarterback in week 1. And, this goes back to, I've been writing about this on periodicals like Northeast Ohio Sports Insiders. Shout out to all those great writers there, Natalie and Munch Bishop and all those guys there, Bill, that they do great writing. And I, in my last writing in my Browns First and Goal report, I did suggest, it sounded like Deshaun Watson would be the starting quarterback. But there was this thing that happened over the weekend where the Browns played this, this preseason game there in Cleveland, and they were practicing with the Buffalo Bills, and the Browns in this preseason game had Shedeur Sanders start this game. Part of this, how did I describe it last week? This dog and pony show of a quarterback competition where it was just kind of a farce. And the Browns tried to say, oh, Shedeur's got a shot and he's going to start this second game. It's only fair, according to old man Todd Monken. So here we are, Shedeur goes out there and he does a hell of a job. He really played well. Now, the other part of this, I'm going to throw back again. Shedeur Sanders isn't an idiot. Shedeur Sanders has played real NFL football games. He won 3 games and lost 4. So any of you out there right now who continue to say that, well, he's really not an NFL quarterback, you have no idea what the hell are you talking about? Like, you have no bearing whatsoever. I don't your understanding of the game of football, it makes no sense to me. So keeping that in mind. So back to the game on Saturday. Shador does a good job. Deshaun, we know he's coming in the second half. We know it's in front of the home crowd. We all know, if you're a Cleveland Browns fan who's been around long enough, you know, based on what has happened over the last several seasons and how he went out with this injury 2 years ago, and you know the Browns fans are not enamored and overly excited about Deshaun Watson. Yes, people are booing. People had been booing. People are continuing to boo. People have been booing at practices and blah, 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 blah. So when he went into the game in the second half, there are far more people that were pleading and rooting for Shador Sanders to be the week 1 starter. Most Browns fans, and Steve Gill and I talked about this the other day on the show Thursday night on our Fanatical Elf show. The logic of it, the logic is Shador should be starting. Shador had closed the gap. We continue to hear this on Deshaun Watson, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then the Browns coaches and front office try to say, well, you're not seeing everything. You just see bits and pieces of practices. And really, Deshaun's doing really great work and blah, blah, blah. Well, he showed some good things in the first game when he played Chicago. But like my colleague Steve says, you know, uh, Deshaun is only as good as the talent that's around him. And he did better in that Chicago game, obviously, with the first teamers. He comes into this game on Saturday in the second half, playing alongside third and fourth string players. And beat writers in Cleveland like Mary Kay Cabot are trying to defend this immediately, probably because they're close ties with the Browns front office, and saying, oh, well, Deshaun, you got to give him a break because he's playing with guys that he doesn't really play with, but while Shador, he's played with these guys and blah. This is a bunch of BS, just complete bony BS. Ridiculous. But that's not the story. The story in the game was that Deshaun was god awful. I mean, his first several passes were just terrible. They look like middle school passes. I've coached middle school football. I mean, Deshaun Watson isn't any better than a quarterback at the middle school level, for God's sakes. He's throwing the ball on the ground. His passes are getting tipped. He just looks awkward and weird. And so, yes, fans are booing. And the late Jim Donovan, go back and watch the video of where he talks about it's the Browns fans' right to, boo if they want to. We pay a lot of money for season tickets and to buy all the apparel and all this crap. We do that all the time. So we have the right to boo you, Deshaun Watson. We have the right to boo you, Todd Monken. We have the right to boo you, Cleveland Browns organization, because when you suck and you don't do what you're supposed to do, and you talk to us about how we're trying to put a winning product on the field to give our team the best chance to win, that's a bunch of BS, especially right now with this group of coaches and front office staff and owners. It's beyond ridiculous. I haven't gotten to the best part. Deshaun Watson, does this crappy job, and he's pissed off. And I know it's after the game. You're supposed to have a cooling off period, and they usually do. And I don't know how much time went from the time that he left the field. Obviously, he didn't finish the game. They brought in backups like Dylan Gabriel, so he had time to decompress, but he hadn't really. So when he goes out there onto the platform, the media platform, he decides to just rip in to the Browns fans and media folks. Now, some people say, well, he didn't really rip into them. Well, he said that we were disrespectful, that fans were disrespectful, and that he's given all his time and energy, and he's done all these things in the community, and he just thought he'd get a better reception. But, they really are, we are really disrespectful of that. And then he got into some really personal stuff, which I've already mentioned before, which kind of scares me a little bit for him on the mental side of things, because he is just a mental basket case. I've said this for years, and he's not well. He's not well in the head. And so here he is talking about this and that. And he's talking about, well, maybe I'll just play in the away games. I mean, he was dejected. I know he was upset and everything like that, but it was mind blowing, especially to the media that were in the room. Now, I've been in those rooms myself, and I hope to be in there again this season, up in the press box and down in the visitor in the locker rooms, talking to these players and listening to them. There's a lot going on, and a lot, so it was just god awful. So this all happens, and everybody from the media, the fans are just, we're all blasting this and saying, "Oh my God," and then people are saying, "Well, the Browns can't put this guy on the field of play ever again. They should just try to trade him and all this stuff." Well, we all know it comes down to money, and that's really where we're at right now. We talk about, well, whose decision was it, and people are arguing about that. Some people that I know want to say, well, it's all Todd Monken, because that's what Todd Monken is saying, and the front office is saying, oh, it's all Todd Monken. But then others are saying, well, it's all the ownership, blah blah blah. Who the hell cares at this point? I don't think that this decision was one person's decision. I think that there were lots of people factoring into this, and I think the biggest factor in all of it, and you probably know the answer to this, is the dollar bill, is the money. Deshaun Watson is owed, we guaranteed him a $230 million contract. He's not going anywhere until March 11th of 2027. Yeah, I saw Adam Schefter talking about something about how they're going to try to bring him back. I'm like, Adam Schefter, everybody loves Adam Schefter because he breaks the news. He doesn't know jack squat about what's going on here in Cleveland. So here we are. Deshaun Watson is basically starting because he's getting paid. And the owner, who's just a complete idiot at this point, because a year ago he's saying that ship has sailed, now has brought him back. Those of you out there that are saying, well, now, God's sakes, if Shedeur Sanders can't beat out Deshaun Watson, my God, this is just the worst quarterback room of all time. Like, no, it's not. Now, I've always been a Shedeur Sanders supporter, and I'm going to continue to do that. And I think the kid has a bright future. I honestly do. And if you're one of those people out there that thinks that this is all just that he's no better than any of these other quarterbacks, you're just wrong. You really are. Shedeur Sanders has, not only does he have talent, and he's getting better at the position and working on all these skills, but he's also a likable guy. You want to talk about a contrast, and I think that's where we're all at too, as Browns fans. We see this contrast between Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders, and it's like night and day, apples and oranges. I mean, it's the opposite. Young versus old. One criminal, one not a criminal. Um, so you really are a supposed criminal. Uh, it's really something to, I don't know if you can admire it. It's just something to, it's baffling. It really is. And I think, going into that game, like I said, I thought that it would be Deshaun, just based on all these things that Todd Monken, who can't, he's an old guy, he's 60 years old. He's going to put all of his cards. And I wouldn't be surprised if when they hired this guy, that they basically said, you got to go with Watson. That's all our money's invested in Watson, 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 Watson. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at. Hey, let's pause for a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about this fiasco and lots of other things. I got a lot of other things on my mind, especially with some of you fans out there who are calling out other fans who we'll talk more about that after the break. Hey, thanks again for coming back here to the Johnny Cleveland podcast, part of the Fanatical L's Network, part of Fans First Network. And shout out to Hemisphere Coffee Roasters. They shake the hand of the farmer. Check out their website. Great little coffee company up in Mechanicsburg, Ohio. Also check out sherry'slicorice.com, sherry'slicorice.com. There are supporters as well, and we support them. And if you go to their website and buy some of their amazing, delicious licorice, all flavors, they got raspberry, they got strawberry, blue raspberry, cinnamon, watermelon. You go to their website, buy $25 worth of licorice, and you will get 15% off if you use the code ELFZ Network 15. ELFZ Network 15. When you check out, you will get some of this amazing licorice. And I've got some right here. This is an unopened bag of cinnamon. Yes, very good stuff. I had another bag that was slightly opened last night, and there was like 4 or 5 pieces in there, and you start with one, then it led to two, and then three. I'm still paying the effects of that, right? Um, Anywho, let's get back to this conversation about the Brownies and this team, and really what's happened over the last 24 hours. It's been a struggle for me. Many of you who listen to me or follow me or know me personally know that I'm a diehard. Now, I don't know if I'm the biggest Cleveland Browns fan. I was, told that when I was living in Wichita, Kansas, that I was the biggest Browns fan west of the Mississippi. Now, I'm not quite sure if I'm that here. Obviously, I'm not west of the Mississippi anymore. I'm back in Columbus, but pretty big Browns fan. I have, like many of us diehard fans, we have been fans for many years. And my childhood memories go back to the mid 1970s, and then especially in 1980 when they made the playoff, Brian Sipe, all of that. That's when my fandom really got going, and I really had got emotional ties, and it's hard to disconnect from that feeling as a Browns fan. And I know like Rod Bloom and his brother Jeff talked with their guest last week, Tom Brunswick, about how family is so vitally important and a big piece of what it is to be a Browns fan. So it's been a real struggle with what the Browns did this week and what Todd Monken decided supposedly on his own with his quarterback competition, because it goes against everything. It goes against everything as Browns fans. Now this is where we get into this whole shenanigans about how Browns fans are treating other Browns fans. Because to be very honest with you, and I want to pull this up. I was going to mention, I think I'm going to do like a shout out every week to the most entertaining tweet or X message that I get on a weekly basis. And, I shared a few thoughts about this decision with picking Deshaun Watson. And in one of my posts on the X, and you can go back and read it yourself, I basically said the gist of it was that Todd Monken is in for basically a rude awakening in week 3, September 27th, down at the stadium. Now, the Browns are on the road for the first 2 games of the regular season. They start the season at Jacksonville, and then they go to Tampa Bay to play good old Baker Mayfield. I guess how Baker Mayfield's going to be feeling. He actually talked about it on some podcasts of himself down in Tampa about how he's looking forward to playing the Browns. And now supposedly he'll get to play against Deshaun Watson, which that'll be entertainment. I think the idea is that, I don't think, and I heard the guys at 92.3, Ken Carmen and his colleague, talking about, they're a lot of us Browns fans are, are we rooting almost against this team and Deshaun Watson in the first games of this regular season, so that maybe Shedeur Sanders would get that start in week 3. highly unlikely. I don't see it exactly that way. I think Todd Monken is a sucker and he's going to give Deshaun Watson more than just 2 games, unless something tragic happens again or Deshaun Watson is absolutely horrific in those 2 games and throws like 6 interceptions or something crazy like that. But I just think Todd Monken's going to give this guy like at least the first 4, 5, 6 games of the season, regardless. So that's when I made this post. One of the many posts I said about the Browns and Todd Monken getting a rude awakening, and it's going to be. I said like the honeymoon is going to be over. The honeymoon's over for Todd Monken. I know some of you out there really are appreciate Todd Monken because he's older and stuff. He's getting his first chance. I know even Rod Bloom and Rod was talking about it, and he's rooting for Todd Monken. And look, I'm not going to root against this guy. He's brand new to the coaching field, but I think he made a boneheaded mistake with his announcing Deshaun. So I make this statement about being a rude awakening, and the Boo Birds will be there in Cleveland, and they're going to be there. We know, especially if Deshaun Watson is playing. And shout out this is so again to highlight the tweet of the evening of the week is goes out to Clint for Francisco. Hey Clint, I hope you're listening and watching. Really appreciate your message. I'll just share a little bit of hindsight here, but he likes to razz up a lot of fans and thinks that Browns fans of a certain type, right? So he begins by saying real Browns fans, so suggesting that some of us out there who have podcasts aren't real Browns fans. I wonder who he's talking about. So real Browns fans cheer will drown out the booing Browns haters. I don't believe the smattering of booing haters hiding on social media. Hiding. I have a podcast. I'm not hiding, so you can see me. Um, so social media dare show their face at a regular season game. Oh, by the way, Clint, I have season tickets. So, if you're ever at a game, it sounds like you have season tickets. Unless they are, unless, and then he goes on to say, who are hiding on social media dare show their face at a regular season game unless they don't know real Browns fans at real games, but they'll find out. Ooh, good one there, Clint. Um, Browns fans, we're all come in all shapes and sizes, and you can. We all cheer for them a little differently, but we all love our beloved Cleveland Browns. And when people come up and they make comments and they share their thoughts on social media platforms, and so yeah, okay, there might be people that are hide behind those posts, but guess what, Clint? I'm not hiding. So um, it's it's this thing where you know everybody can kind of cheer and root on the Browns the way that best fits them. There's just not one universal way to cheer on the Cleveland Browns. I'm glad that you love Deshaun Watson, apparently, and the idea that Browns fans aren't allowed to boo. So I guess you're not a Jimmy Donovan fan. If you're a lifelong fan of the Browns, I guess you don't have a lot of respect for Jimmy Donovan, who went on the air many years ago and actually said, "Hey, Browns fans, you have every right to boo." Did you miss that message from the late Jimmy Donovan? Anyway, Clint, thanks for the text. Moving on to better subjects here. Uh, Before we get that part, the better part, there is a preseason game Thursday night down at the stadium against the New England Patriots. The Browns are not going to be playing Deshaun Watson because he's their starter in week 1. And they're not going to be playing Shador Sanders. Some people are speculating that that's because they want to, in case Deshaun Watson gets injured in week 1 or 2, that we have a healthy Shador Sanders and they don't want to risk Shador Sanders being hurt in any um, injury that way. So we'll see what happens Thursday. I'm be interested to see how many actually fans show up to the game. Yeah, and I'm a season ticket holder, but I'm not going to be at the game. I'm sorry about that, all of you who are disappointed. But that's the game coming up Thursday. And then after that, the Browns have a window of time. They don't play their first regular season game until what, September 13th? No. Yes, September 13th. They play their first game down in Jacksonville, and then they play their next, like I said, away game at Tampa against the um, Baker Mayfield and those guys. So the Browns have two away games. So realistically, they don't come back to Cleveland until September 27th, where all hell's going to potentially break loose. Bottlegate 2.0, I don't know. We'll find out. So there you have it on that end. Now, back to Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, you know, we all love Nick Chubb. If I know this is hard for some people like Clint to understand this, but we all love Nick Chubb. And even if we're or somebody or I or you or whoever is booing Deshaun Watson, doesn't take away from the fact that we all loved Nick Chubb. Because really, the case study in opposites is Nick Chubb and Deshaun Watson. My, what a contrast in professionalism. That's why we love Nick Chubb and why he's endearing and why for the rest of our lives we will think fondly of Nick Chubb. So many great memories. I mean, to begin with, that Hugh Jackson refused to play the kid, for god awful reasons because Hugh Jackson's a stupid coach. But then when he got in there, Nick Chubb was wonderful. What, 5 straight seasons or 4 straight seasons was over 1,000 yards? Could have a fifth one, but Hugh Jackson didn't put him in at the end of some game. He had over 6,438 yards rushing. He is third all time in Cleveland Browns history on the rushing totem pole, just behind Jim Brown and Leroy Kelly. So he was amazing. I was disappointed, like many fans, that he was not picked up by the Browns when he ended up going to the Houston Texans. But that injury that he got against the Pittsburgh Squealers in an unfortunate manner several years ago really did him in. He had had such a great career up to that point, coming because he was at Georgia when he seriously injured his knees, came back from that, and unfortunately it just happened again, and he just wasn't the same. Despite me hoping that he would regain that Nick Chubb spark on the football field, it just never happened. So he announced his retirement, and it was very cool to see him talk about it and be realistic about it. He's 30 now. And, I have a 30-year-old daughter myself. And, seeing the transition from the adults and how Nick Chubb started his career in Cleveland as a young kid in his early 20s, and now he's 30, and how your life kind of looks a little different, how things mean different things to you. And so his ability to walk away from the game and understand that, some of these goals that he had as a young player, he wasn't going to be able to reach those goals. And that was disappointing, but he can look at life differently now. And that's a very healthy way of going through life. And so I applaud Nick Chubb. We should all honor Nick Chubb. I have, like I said, the last show, I have a canvas painting of Nick Chubb over here on the side of my loft. And he was the closest thing to somebody like Jim Brown. And he was a delight to watch run. There were so many wonderful moments in games. My favorite, I think, series of games was, I think it was that 2020 season when the Browns, I'm going to take a pause and drink some Diet Coke here. When actually the Browns were playing the Texans one week and then the Philadelphia Eagles the following week. Do you remember that? They had back-to-back home games. They were coming off of a bye. They were kind of in the midst of, they weren't surging, but they were kind of 500, a little bit around that edge. They needed to keep winning. They played the Texans. They didn't get a lot of offense. And it was late in the game. The Browns had a slim lead. Nick Chubb got the ball around the end against the Texans and ran around the end, the left hand, jogged down, sprinted down the left hand of the field. And instead of going into the end zone, which the commentators thought he was going to do, and keep in mind the clock was ticking, I think it was under the 2-minute warning, he stepped out of bounds at the 1 yard line so that Baker Mayfield and the offense then could take a knee and win the game. I think we were up by like 3 points. So instead of going into the end zone, he made the right decision to help save his team a big win. And the following week, they played Philly, and he had some really great runs in that game. Just so many great moments that we should respect and honor Nick Chubb. So we will miss you, Nick. Uh, I hope that he gets an opportunity. Maybe the Hall of Fame is there. We'll see. All right. Let's see here. Wanted to couple last things here. The Guardians are doing really good, right? I think they swept the last series that they were in. They're right in the thick of it. I think they would be in the playoffs right now as a wild card team. So keep playing well, Cleveland Guardians. And finally, there is this crazy thing going on, and maybe if you've been watching football in the off season here, somebody came out with this new rule, the NCAA or somebody, that basically if you're a college player and you come out to the NFL and you do not make the NFL roster for whatever team you're on, you can go back to college if you have some eligibility left. Well, the Browns had a player that came over from some school, I forget which one, in college, and the Browns picked him up, signed him as a free agent, undrafted free agent, tight end. I think he actually played in the preseason game and against Chicago, maybe that first one, and then got released. And he ended up going back to a different college. I think they got picked up by Ole Miss, maybe, or LSU, maybe LSU. And so he will be playing college ball. And so this has opened up a huge can of worms, especially for college coaches. Earlier this morning, I live here in Columbus, and they were talking about this, and visiting with Ryan Day. I guess this was yesterday. And initially, Ryan Day said, well, we're going to have to consider that and look at maybe rosters of NFL teams. But then since then, this afternoon, the Big Ten conference came out and said that they were not be taking players back who entered the NFL or thought they were going to play in the NFL or were on a practice squad or one of these training camps and bring them back to college. That they're saying as a conference, they're not going to do that. So now the question is, are other conferences going to follow what the Big Ten just did? And what will that do to some of these individual coaches and stuff like this Lane Kiffin, who, now is at LSU, brought in this guy that was just in Cleveland? Will things change again? So we'll see. But my God, it's just a free for all here in the college game. Not sure if I really like it. I don't think a lot of people. It's very confusing. It's not like I already get confused. I don't need to be more confused. All right, folks. I hope you all have a very good evening. I appreciate your time. Thank you for those of you who are commenting some wild and crazy comments. I'll just leave that. And then I will share this one that about Shador because I'm a Shador fan. And thank you again. You said, no, they don't play Shador because they're scared he will outshine the lies they've been telling. Yeah, I'm not going to totally disagree with you on that one. I think, obviously, look, I'm not an NFL coach, but what really bothers me, I think the most about this whole thing and is being a Browns fan and trying to stay loyal to that, despite some Browns fans like, what was your name again? Clint. Shout out to Clint again, who think there's only a certain type of Browns fans. And if we boo, we're gonna have Clint find us at the stadium. I think it's just that the whole thing about fandom and Browns fans are not stupid. We're smart. We've followed this game long enough. Our teams have sucked over the years. We know what's good. We know what's bad. We've seen it. So, I think that the Browns organization does not give the fan base much credit. And they don't have to care about us. They always like to say, well, we don't care really. But that's where you're really missing the boat. And I think that's where this organization is really starting to miss and is becoming more disconnected every day. And that's the scary part about this as a lifelong fan where is this going? Where is this headed? Because if they can go out and do all this and put Deshaun Watson out there and all this stuff and try to sell us on this idea that he's their best way of winning games, and you have a young kid like Shador who fans love, young and old, and who's a nice kid, and who can, by the way, play the game of football, that's where it gets insulting. You know, Deshaun and his his crying the other night, he almost wanted an apology. I heard some people here in Columbus talking about that on the sports radio. It almost sounded like Deshaun in that initial presser on Saturday somehow wanted, like, he was the victim. And we want to talk about victim stuff. Don't get started, because this whole fiasco started in 2022 because of a lot of things that Deshaun did off the field of play that we'll just leave it at that. So we'll see what happens. I'm not happy right now. I think a lot of Browns fans are unhappy with how everything is spinning. And it's really, I don't know about you, but like I said earlier, and I'm having a really hard time with this and getting behind this team. And look, we have some great people here on the Fanatical Elves Network. We have some great shows with Steve Gill and Rod Bloom, his brother Jeff, and others. And they all do a great job of covering the Browns, and we're real fans just like you. And I think it's unrealistic to not expect, Browns fans like the ones that are giving you these podcasts to not be somewhat disappointed or trying to figure out reasons for what's going on, just like you're trying to figure out. It's hard to stay loyal sometimes. Yes, we're gonna cheer for the Browns because they're the Browns, and that's who we've cheered on since you were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. But when you get these decisions made by people that think that they know more than you, a lot of times it's hard to take. And this one has definitely been hard to take because, and I said earlier, it comes down to the money, and that's simply why he's out there. And it's sad because they allowed this guy, this Deshaun Watson, to basically rip and put down the fan base, and that's dividing even more the positivity between the organization and its fans. And the Browns are wanting to build this fancy dancy new stadium, this dome stadium, and all this stuff. And the Haslam's are putting all this money into it, and they just expect people are just going to be clamoring. Look, and I know Todd Monken's always saying, "Well, winning's going to solve all these problems." Well, the problem is Todd Monken and everybody in the organization. The Browns haven't won. And there's nothing out there that suggests otherwise moving forward. We got a lot of things that are positives, but it still hasn't transitioned to wins. And I know people are going to like, well, it'll automatically change. No, it's not. I think that it's going to, yeah, look, a win is a win. And Browns fans aren't going to be stupid about it. Yeah, we like the wins, but it's also this trust. And this goes back to well before Haslam's and stuff. This goes back to all the things that happened in the prior years and the decades with Art Modell in the 90s and losing the team in 95 and all that. There's a lot of hurt feelings, and I don't think that this organization currently really, really, really gets it. And I think that's where this whole issue right now with Deshaun Watson has really reared its ugly head. So we'll see what happens. As a podcasting and as a writer for Brown's material, I will continue to do my very best and provide you the best coverage and best writing that I possibly can. Even though some people out there in La La Land like to think that there's a certain type of Browns fans. There's all sorts of types of Browns fans. Just don't come out looking for us out there. But you can see my pretty face now. So if you really do want to go figure that out, Clint, just let us know. Everybody, I hope you all have a very good evening. Thanks again for tuning in to the Johnny Cleveland podcast, part of the Fanatical Elves Network and Fans First Network. We'll see what we do on Thursday. I think Steve and I will be doing a Fanatical Elves show prior to kickoff of the last preseason game between the Browns and the New England Patriots. Until then, take care, go Browns, and keep smiling. See ya.